I said, I said, you've never ever talked to me. You've never seen a deer. I said, the least you could do for your readers is get the truth. I said, you're welcome to come over and look at the deer, bring whatever score you want anytime. I got nothing to hide with it. But they did do an interview with me, and the first question he asked is, why spend all this time and money to fight Boone and Crockett? I said, you know what, I'm tired of defending myself. I said, ask Boone and Crockett why they're spending so much time and effort and money to fight a deer that they know what it is, instead of using their efforts and money for conservation efforts that is in their bylaws. And he says, well, why not buy a new truck instead of buying antlers? I said, I got a new truck and I collect antlers. He goes, well, are you arrogant about it? And I said, yeah, absolutely. There's some arrogance in it. I said, if you buy a new truck, you don't take the back roads home. You don't drive down the alleys. Maybe you go down Main Street with the window down and the music turned a little louder because you're happy. You're in a good mood. I said, maybe that's a little bit arrogant. I'll admit that. But I said, this has never been about me. And I had told Jack early on, he said, well, this has gone too far now. There's nothing we can do about it, because he knew what he did. And he's like, you're just out to make money. I said, I'll hand that deer back to Johnny King today, and you'll never hear Jay Fish's name mentioned with it again. I said, I don't need this in my life. I'm raising a family and this and that. But I said, it just, for some reason, this just rubbed me so wrong that a guy that goes out and shoots a great deer, and some of the scorers are calling him, telling him, hide it away, Johnny. Don't let anybody see it. We'll unveil it together, because they wanted to ride piggyback on Johnny's deer. Once the rule went against them, they turned on Johnny like rabid dogs. And the one guy, he denied it. And I talked to the editor, Dan Schmidt of Deer and Deer Hunting. His wife said that the guy in question called her every day. Dan was up in Canada on the hunt. Finally, his wife called and said, you got to get a hold of this guy. He's bugging about this world record deer. And finally he called him. Well, when the rule went against him, he turned on Johnny so fast that then, but he was all for it until he got put in his place.
Yeah, that was kind of funny. I ran into him at a deer show a couple years later, and I went up and said, hey, and he just looked at me and kind of walked away. I'm like, I was just saying hi, you know what I mean? But yeah, just didn't want anything to do with me, but it's crazy.
So they definitely had that. They already knew the outcome of the panel before you guys even showed up.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
See, that's wild. And who's this Jack guy? And I guess who died and made him king? Like, if his rule is the number one in Boone and Crockett list, like, what's his place in all of this?
He was the chairman of the records committee. Buck Buckner was the chairman of the rules committee. And the funny thing is, when I walked up to Buckner and handed him that deer, and I said, what rule book are you going to use to score it? He said, the rule book at times. So I took out the 2000 scores manual. I said, this is the book you're going to use. And he goes, oh yeah, that's right. He goes, we were going to put the new rule in this book, but it was already at print and we didn't have time to get it in there. So that's why it's not in that book. I said, so then why wasn't it printed in Fair Chase? And why wasn't there a letter mailed to your scorers? So there's this new rule that your scorers don't even know about. How can they go out and score deer if you were holding back rules? And he goes, well, that's all I got to say. I said, well, that's fair enough. And I took out the scores manual from 2009. I said, this is the 2009 scores. He goes, what book is that? I said, it's your 2009 scores manual. And he goes, I didn't even know we had one. I said, you don't even know you have a new book and you're the chairman of the rules committee. You're the guy that puts it together. I said, that rule still isn't in here. I said, 9 years later, you still didn't have time to put it in there. I said, see, Buck, this is the issue we got. Nobody can be forthright about what's going on here. And after I call it the fake panel, which it was just a setup. I called Buckner and we had a couple of nice conversations on the side. And I said, what went on at Boone and Crockett? He says, Jack's arrogance and our laziness. He said, Jack works in Missoula. He's a full-time employee, and we just got lazy and didn't check up on him. And we figured he was running it right. We didn't expect anything like this. And more or less, he said, well, it's too late now. It's too many people out in the public. I said, there's a lot of big corporations that make mistakes, and you write a apology. We're a very forgiving society. I said, Boone and Crockett will be looked up just as they were before. Just a mistake was made and somebody got a little bit overzealous with his position. It's an easy fix. I said, the numbers are there. You've already scored it. You have the numbers. The antlers are still available to you at any time. I said, was this a ball or a strike in the 1968 World Series that nobody knows about? I said, everything on the information is still right there in front of you to fix this. They chose a different route.
In your opinion, I'm sure it's hard. It may be hard to say, but you hear people talk about a carrot and a stick, like the incentive structure. Like, what is the incentive? What is the reason to not allow a new buck the world record, but that's rightfully its claim? I don't understand what skin people have in the game here, unless there's something dark and shady and from a monetary perspective going on.
It's I've got examples of other deer they've done this too. There, one of them's even more egregious than what they did to the king buck. Buckner told me that back in the 90s, about the mid 90s, that's when they passed the rule that they will accept broken beams and broken tines if they fit back together and they don't affect the score. And Buckner got it passed through, and Jack was furious. He didn't want that rule in there. All of a sudden, Johnny's deer shows up and it's broke. Totally something that Renault is 100% against. I just think he was like, there's no stinking way I'm letting this deer in. It was broken, and pretty much what Buckner told me. He said Jack was totally against my broken beam rule, even though it was voted on by the rules committee. And that's another thing. After I was told to call back to Boone and Crockett to get that information, I called and Justin Spring answered. I said, "Hey, Justin, I heard you're hunting with your dad." "Yeah," I said, "Hope you had a great hunt." He goes, "Yeah, my dad got a pronghorn. I didn't get nothing." I said, "But that you wouldn't have it any other way, right?" "Oh yeah," he said, I was there to make sure my dad got one." I said, "Well, congratulations. Glad you're still able to go with your father and hunt." I said, "That's pretty special." And I told him how Buckner told me. He says, "Well, gee, I just got back in. Can you give me a week and call back?" So I waited a week, called back. "No, I still haven't had time. Getting ready for the new, panel scoring, getting things set up." So I waited 2 weeks and I called back and I said, "I hate to keep bugging you, Justin, but I'm just going by what Buck Buckner told me, Eldon Buck Buckner told me to call you back." He said, "Jay, you will never get a thing from us ever again, and don't ever call here again." And he slammed the phone down. That's the last time I talked to Missoula about the case.